got a lot of things cooking here today, and we're talking about protecting agency IT system development. We have Jethro Lloyd here with us. Hang on a sec. Do we have another picture? There he is. Look at that guy. Look at that guy. That is one good cameo shot there, big man.
Thank you, Dave.
We'll talk a little bit about iLab and how they got started. I'm Dave Lowe. I'm your GovBrief host. Glad to be here today. We want to welcome everybody that's coming in. When I started to see how many folks from different agencies are here, we know that there's a pretty significant problem with IT failures. Everybody knows it, and I'm glad that we're here to talk about it. And we actually have a couple of things here, Jethro. Best briefing ever, Howard says from the VA, if he learns anything new. Anything. So if you just give him just a tidbit of, well, first of all, where are you originally from? Because I know it's not Indianapolis.
No, I grew up in a big city in the southern part of Africa, in South Africa, a city called Johannesburg.
Johannesburg. So Howard, we have met Howard's little tidbit. He learned something new that Jethro's from Johannesburg. So anyway, all right. So Wanda, if I learn how to measure software quality, how about that one, Jethro?
Wanda, we can definitely help you. We're going to discuss that quite extensively through today's briefing and how you can measure software quality. It's what we do. It's what we help people do.
That's right. Fantastic. And Kevin from the FAA, if I can justify why we use cloud other than their own. I'm not sure we're going to get to that, Kevin, but that's a great comment. And Tony from GPO, we discussed the DoD CAC replacement and non-DoD federal agencies biometric technology. I can guarantee you we're going to take that one offline, right, Jethro?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
We're going to take that one offline. So please address this. Jonathan, cybersecurity, fraud detection and analysis, opportunities and tools for support. I do believe you're going to talk a little bit about how you can solve some of those problems, right?
Absolutely. We're going to cover that for sure.
And Jim from the FAA, I probably have a few questions geared toward HTM cybersecurity, but maybe too broad at this time. So we can take that offline. I'm sure Jethro would love to talk with you about that. And we don't want to put people in a coma, right?
No, absolutely.
So Ronald from the FCC, why are contractors who come and go involved in every aspect of IT? Woo. Oh, that's a zinger right there. I think maybe we need to have a therapy session with Ronald.
Yeah, and Ronald, my question is, I don't understand, to be honest. I would love to hear more about that question.
Yep, and there's definitely some issues behind it for sure. So we will talk about, we'll get you introduced to Jethro and his team and what they do. We'll talk about some briefing controls so you can control this for yourself. Some of your issues and challenges from the agency standpoint, and getting to a place where breaking the cycle of bad development, because that's what we really want to do, is want to break that cycle. And we'll talk about some QA automation case studies, which will help you do that. We'll get to your Q&A. In fact, it's a small enough group. Well, I don't know. It's about 25 now, so we'll see. But if you have any questions, we'll get involved in that. And we'll talk about some things for how you can do things in the future. I'm going to pop in the chat right here, and I'll do this a couple of times. These are the handouts for today, which give you access to the things that we're going to be referring to. A lot of great information that's out there, including some propaganda from iLab, including your capabilities. So there you have it. If you've been living under a rock and you have no idea how Zoom goes, and I know how Jethro feels about Zoom, just before we went live, we had to throttle him back from using particular 4-letter words. But besides that, if you've never been to Zoom, you can go up there in the top there and do side by side. You can make us bigger or smaller. I don't think you'll change Jethro's accent, which I think is a permanent thing, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So if you would like to participate, you can do that by chatting, by raising your hand. If you want to ask questions, pop them in the Q&A. If you just want to communicate with everybody and tell you who you are and what you do, and if you like to network, that's great too. But if you have some particular comment, we can unmute you by raising your hand. Or if you have something offline that you don't want to spread with everybody in this, send it to katie.tucker at ilabqa.com, and she will be glad to help you. I am certain of that. A quick disclaimer, this is not affiliated or endorsed by GSA, even though you're GSA schedule holder, and it's not, or by any other agency for that matter. You're not going to believe this, but all your participation is voluntary, and engagement by you is not an indication to buy from anybody, including Jethro. But then this is what GSA gave us so that we can communicate. You can actually participate back and forth. So, Jethro, we know a little bit about what you do. How long you been in business? I know you're in Indiana. Tell us about what you guys do.
Super. So iLab's been around since the late 90s. We've been operating primarily and only in software quality assurance and testing for companies around the world. So starting out of South Africa, and we moved our operations and headquarters to the United States. Our industry serves retail, financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, pharmaceutical, banking, telecommunications. But the most important and relevant for today is certainly the public sector. And as we were in Indiana, and it was kind of our founding starting point for what we do here in the United States, many of our state clients started out and are still continuing to do business with us, specifically in the beautiful state of Indiana, barring the Colts. So we help agencies deploy and maintain software. So the point I'm trying to make is, depending on where the cycle is, and we're going to talk through that as a theme right through today's briefing, depending on where we are in the cycle, we get involved in software quality assurance from the beginning right through to when its application is in production, it's being maintained, there's lots of changes, laws change, requirements change. So we are the experts and one of the global leaders in independent software quality assurance. We focus on everything from helping people define their strategies to the actual activity of testing. And the big buzzword today is, how do you take all that testing and how do you automate it? How do you make it more efficient? How do you add technology to go faster and do more in a shorter period of time? And then the ultimate one is, now you've built something and there's thousands of users and thousands of processes hitting applications. How do you make sure it's the performance gets to what it is? So we are a GSA. We're on the GSA schedule. So really just some very important things. 95% of private sector companies engage in independent software quality assurance for every software deployment. That independence could be something independent within their own organization, but or external. And government agencies that used our services increased their success rate on new system deployment by 100%. They went from failure to success. Okay. Every day we execute approximately 2,500 test cases and 9,000 plus automated test cases. We've got over 1,000 projects worldwide successfully tested since 1998. And approximately every hour we find 220 defects for our clients, which is ultimately 3 defects per minute. And if we're finding them, your clients, your constituents, your users are not finding them. So our areas of expertise, to reiterate, on the consulting side, it's everything from test management, data migration, functional, and the list goes on right through to usability testing. And on the technical side, we take everything we do on the left and we try apply technology and good practices and all that good stuff to bring in automation, performance. And now a big part of our business is ultimately things end up in some kind of mobile space or device space. And we do a lot around mobile testing. So if you look at the cycle, it's the testing right through to all the IP. Our service models are pretty straightforward. I think you guys have got a huge experience in working with vendors. So our service models are managed services. So with the state government, we develop and design fixed price statements of work. We work with the clients. We take some risk. We say we're going to do what we're going to do, and we help them complete the testing. So managed service, we do project-based delivery. We do some strategic consulting, helping guys make some changes in their processes or put in tools or improve the way they're doing things. And then, of course, there's a good old-fashioned resource augmentation where we get a client that says, hey, we need some bodies. We need people to come in and do the testing. Help us with the team. So we do that on a scale. The final thing is we're really proficient in all the major testing tools. So for those of you that have worked within quality assurance, if you look down those lists, those are actually our partners. We work with those guys on an ongoing basis. As I said, it's since 1998. Some of them haven't been around since 1998, but we have proficiency. We've deployed it, we resell it, and we use it. everything that we do, all our employees are full-time employees here in the United States. We do have offshore capabilities, but for all our state government clients, everybody is local. All our resources sit and reside. We work within Florida. Our team sits and resides there and supports those clients, New York, etc. They're all full-time. All of them are accredited, and we use those strong strategic partnerships and alliances to deliver our solutions.
I love it. And so one of the biggest reason why we're here is federal agencies are spending over $100 billion every year on their systems, making their systems work, doing the systems improvement. And that has created some challenges with failures. And every one of us has been through failures of systems. This created mandates for modernization, some of the systems just getting older and some of the holes in there. GAO puts out reports and saying, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, or it's not working the way that it should. And also we have CIO Council recommendations. And some of the things that GAO are saying is many programs have yet to implement certain recommended practices associated with modern software development. This is where you play, Jethro, and what did you call your testing? It's third party, right?
Independent,
third party. That's right. Independent. And why we're here is because and there's a high risk list, right? And nobody wants to be on this list of fraud, waste, and abuse. And it revolves around management and mismanagement. And that is what gives your agency a black eye and what gets you out on CNN or in front of Congress or whatever it happens to be. So that's what we're trying to avoid. And when you're thinking about this, take us through the process of how this works for the testing to make sure that the quality is, and you're getting delivered. You are acting on behalf of the agency to make sure that the project is getting done right. So tell us how that works.
And Dave, I want to point out the big flashing sentence at the top there, the never finished syndrome that we run into with so many of our state clients. They have all the right intentions of buying a great system to solve whatever need for their constituents, to do good. That's what government does good for society. And they buy from a big vendor, and the vendor's doing a great job, but everybody's doing this. Everybody's pointing. It's that never finished syndrome. The vendor's saying it's done, and the agency is saying it's not done because it doesn't meet my expectation. So it's delays, it's disruption, it's increased cost. And what we see is this never-ending change request event, ongoing every year. Wow, we've got to make a change request. We didn't quite get it done where we're supposed to. So what does that end? It's your reputation. More than 50% of our state clients that we've engaged in had, at some stage, a massive reputational event that caused them to get on the news. Whether it be a lawsuit, whether it be a failure, and let's be honest, everybody loves it when government makes a mistake. It's newsworthy, okay? It's that poor customer experience. How many people speak about, I don't go onto their website, I'm not going to go get that service because I couldn't use it. I didn't know how it worked. It wasn't intuitive. It didn't meet my demands or whatever it is. But more importantly, on the state agency, it's this massive increasing of time, okay? And worse, the huge obligation of federal employees to complete the testing, to actually do all that testing work. They're not going to get to it. It's too much work. Massive systems require massive amount of testing. Where are you going to find that time to do that? All and above with your job. So the lack of quality assurance and independent testing validation is that gap, is what we do for those agencies. We represent the agency from project inception all the way to successful implementation of that IT initiative. And more important, when it's gone live, the living application, the living set of systems that are alive and under constant change. Laws change, rules change, constituents change. So does the application. Sorry, Dave, you were going to say something.
No, I was going to ask. So a lot of times we find that the testing happens right after the build and you're going to deploy. And that's when we see folks coming in and say, well, we're going to do the independent testing here. And what USDS is suggesting is to get you guys involved at the project inception all the way through so that you can catch these things when they're smaller, as opposed to a big bang problem that we see so often when software goes live, even major presidential initiatives go live and they fail, which again gives a really bad taste.
And I think you used the right word. It's the big bang. I think we spoke about it yesterday. Bang by implication is destruction and mess. And that's exactly what happens. A lot of the questions are being asked around the security. Many of those vulnerabilities sit at the architecture. Many of those vulnerabilities speak to the integration. Most of those vulnerabilities also got to do with user controls and some of the activities that happen around process. In designing a system, there are so many factors one has to think about, but not applying the right quality. Can you test it? If I complete this transaction, what would be the impact, etc.? And I'm doing that much earlier on. It costs me far less. There are the realities. If you're finding those problems just before you go live or at the time that you've gone live, it costs more than 100 to 1,000 times more than if you start much earlier on in the process and you apply and adopt quality assurance practices much early on. And that's really what this drawing is saying. Yep. But then post go live, what I want to just point out, Dave, before you jump on, is in your maintenance and operations, because many of the people on this call might be saying, well, I've got something that's live. It is still a problem, though. I have bad quality. Things are not working. We work late at night and over weekends, and we have rollbacks and breaks, etc. The maintenance and operations, you got to be thinking about that cycle starts all over again. Because again, you're starting new projects. You may be procuring more things. You changing your architecture. You're going through the board. It's iterative. It's agile. It's circular in motion. So the same principles apply, and it's the adoption of the practices on an ongoing, repetitive basis, which brings you that value.
And I think that that's really critical. And of all the folks that I've talked to, CIOs, every single one has had situations of this where they didn't test as well as they should, and it creates significant problems. And we've had systems, hundreds of millions of dollar systems, that wind up just completely failing with that. So I am going to ask a quick question, which is, what is your biggest modernization issue? And you can throw that into the chat and let us know what that is. Is it systems architecture? Is it security? Is it measuring progress? Is it scheduling, meeting scheduled deliverables, vendor issues? We heard that one earlier, right? Right, Jethro? Or is it just your sanity that the whole thing makes you go nuts? So, and while you're typing that in, let's systems architecture. Is it just real quick? Is it Selena or Selena? Which one, first or second? Because I want to call you right. So Selena or Selena? Number one, Selena. I'll keep it there. And so while folks are answering this, let us know about the systems architecture. Tell us about how we can break this cycle. Now, the U.S. Digital Service, USDS, as we mentioned earlier, has released the playbook, which I'm going to populate in here again so everybody can grab that if you need to. It's the USDS Playbook. Talk about what you see when you started to review the USDS Playbook. What piqued your interest?
So, Dave, you've highlighted there, it's really the build a service using agile and iterative practices, and then automate your testing and your deployments. Okay. And I think the reason why there's a focus there is, iterative or smaller component-based software engineering practices and procedures have been adopted globally outside of the public sector. So this concept of the Big Bang, let's go back to that Big Bang concept, this wait for a whole long period of time and go make some dramatic music and switch everything on, is old practice. It's not old, but it's an older practice. It's high risk. There's a lot weight on a single moment in time. So the idea is to break things down into smaller components, smaller bite-sized chunks, and release software that way. But what's more important is you then have the advantage to then balance that with number 10, where you can now take these smaller iterations and you can take on and adopt a significant amount of automation. Now, why do you want to do that? The automation takes away human error. The automation makes that I'm taking something and I'm repeating it and I'm doing it over and over again. But the most important thing about automation is I can shove more data sets into those practices to get far bigger coverage. So now I'm not just testing one thing, I'm taking one thing and I'm testing it with many different scenarios. And a lot of what we do within government is driven by that. a single workflow, a single event that somebody has to follow. And depending on where the data comes, so the outcomes are very different. And that's where all the risk is. And we're going to talk about that in a case study a little later on.
Yep. And so your automation approach like encompasses exactly what that is. And
absolutely. So again, reiterating that sort of iterative cycle, that circular cycle. You're going back to discover, you realize, execute, and then report, and so forth and so forth. And repeating that on an ongoing basis throughout your cycles reduces your risk. It's continuous integration, continuous monitoring, and continuous improvement in everything that you're doing.
So, and here's some of the other elements. Take us through this, because this is a little bit more linear, but I think it does come back around as well.
So really what we're trying to show here is if you look at the elements of an automation project, it has to support and improve what you're doing. So if it's number 10 on the list of things that you got to be doing better, you don't want to do it wrong. We've seen so many people engage in automation practices and not realizing that it's an engineering process. It is in itself is a system approach that you need to take into account. So working with those, setting the right objectives, setting the right strategy. What is your outcome? What are you trying to achieve? And ultimately ending up with end-to-end automation across verticals that take a systematic approach. And what I mean by that, Dave, is not looking at it from a singular system, but really looking at how would your constituents, how would your clients, how would your users interact with this application from soup to nuts, okay, from A to Z as they're moving through. Remember, you and I interact with government systems all the time. Yep. We don't know how many systems underlying we're interacting with, and we shouldn't care. And from a security perspective and from a risk perspective, which people talk about, the government is concentrated from a security perspective. That's the view that needs to be taken from a systematic approach, not from a single system approach.
And you brought it up, and we did a briefing yesterday on digital experience, which is looking at it from the user standpoint. And the users are the ones that are really going to be testing you.
Absolutely.
And they're the ones that are going to determine whether or not it's a success or a failure, and whether or not they can get what they need from your systems.
And it's an opt-in and opt-out. It's a reality.
Yeah.
Is no user has to use your system. And if they're not using a system, they're phoning somebody. And we know the challenges, the difficulties of a human interaction in many of these transactions. The president says they wants to do something, pushes out an initiative, and the initiative fails at the system. And that is always a sad thing, because most of these initiatives are good for society, good for the constituents.
That's right.
It needs to support that. And even if you look within some of the departments that maybe focus on certain elements of the country, certain elements of the constituents, each and every single part of the government is to support and aid. And it can't fail at the system side. It cannot fail.
So let's talk about a couple of the case studies here, because you've done some work. And you've done a lot of work within different agencies. So some of these are state agencies, and we'll talk about some of the failures that they had and how you helped to protect them from some of those failures. And that way we leave the federal people out of this.
No, it makes sense. So if we look at the Indiana Family Social Service Administration, it's a big department. It's a massive department. It does an enormous amount around SNAP and TANF. Medicaid, Medicare, and all those good stuff. So there's huge complexities. They were modernizing their program of work. They completed a series of do you mind if I answer Manic's question? Manic's answer question. He says, quality assurance is not software testing. I completely agree. So quality assurance is a series of things that one does in order to create quality gates or controls within a development process to improve what you're doing. And the software testing is the validation that quality assurance has worked. Manic, you are certainly way more mature in your understanding of it. And the reason why we speak to the testing is often it gives us a sort of a snapshot as to where we can see within the development processes, within the processes that are there, to see where we can do improvement. Now, many of our clients might outsource their product engagement, or whatever it is, to a third party. Where we can assist the state, and where we often do, is how they're defining their requirements. What controls are they putting in place? What kind of review processes are they putting in place within their quality assurance? So we tend to talk a bit about the testing, a bit about the outcome, because that's the control mechanism or the technique that we use to see the impacts and the positive around what we do from a quality assurance. The other very important thing, Manik, is a lot of what we do from a defect management perspective or analysis, it gives us a clear understanding of, did the defect occur in the beginning part of the architecture phase? How they're defining the system itself? Was it a failure on the vendor's misunderstanding versus the actual agency themselves? So I agree with you. Testing is not quality assurance, but it is a part of quality assurance or a verification of the improvements of that quality assurance. Manik, I hope we answered your question. We talked to both just to support that. Okay. So looking at the Indiana Family Social Service Administration, they had a quality assurance. So they didn't know what it is that was going wrong. Was it work that they were doing? Was it the work that the vendor was doing? They were ultimately in the syndrome of never being done. It was an ongoing process. Everybody was coming to every single meeting and saying, it's not me, it's you, it's not you, it's not me, whatever it might be. So the first thing we did was actually a software quality assurance assessment. We analyzed every single process that we adopted, every control that they had, every kind of review process that they were looking at. And we went from across the entire program of work to see where we could understand where were the shortfalls within the SDLC. What were they not doing from a quality management perspective? Because you're right, Manik, quality is the responsibility of everybody in the program of work. Everybody's responsible for components of that quality. So as an outcome, we changed a lot of the way in which they were defining their requirements, how they were focusing on some of their things around project management and program management. And then we saw that an inordinate shortfall in the environment was there was an entire phase of what they referred to as user acceptance testing or acceptance or validation that needed to be completed by the state of Indiana Family Social Services Administration, and they were not able to do that. They were also not able to understand when they were doing when the failures were there, what was the root cause of that failure? What was the reason why there was that failure? So we instituted a plan. We obviously did all the testing, but we did an enormous amount of quality assurance improvement where we fixed some of their processes around requirements gathering, definition, user stories, et cetera, and the list went on. But in this particular system, the complexity was they were making an enormous amount of configuration changes depending on the scenarios that were driven by SNAP and TANF and Medicaid and Medicare. We know the complexities of that. A lot of it around what was happening around Obamacare and still to this day, et cetera. So it was all of that work that we get involved in. We verify and validate by what we do from a testing perspective. And we use that as a technique to understand the root cause, to give the feedback back into the process to do quality assurance improvement programs of work or project.
And okay. I think so Manik, I think you're absolutely right. When you threw that out, love it. And hopefully you got to see how implementing the quality assurance across the board earlier in is much more than just software validation and testing, right? So hopefully we did that. Let us know how Jethro did on that, by the way. and give us this other case study. This is another part of Indiana's FSSA. So really what ultimately happened was they went live. So they're one of the first in the 50 states. The pilot went live in August 2020. Well, it actually went live in August 2020 in all the regions. And we helped them get it back on track. And that was the most important thing. So because of our independence, we could look at things objectively. What are they doing from a process perspective? What they were doing from a quality management perspective? And then we validated it through all the testing to ensure that feedback and that continuous improvement was looked at. And here's another one. This is INPERS? Is that how you say that?
Correct. INPERS, a retirement fund. They went through a modernization effort, Dave. So they were at a maturity level 0 in how they were doing things. They did typically what most people did. They went out, they found a vendor, and they said, "Hey, Mr. Vendor, build me this thing." And there's a lot of risks around that. So again, from a quality management or quality assurance perspective, we help define their actual software development life cycle, all the quality gates and all the quality controls against those processes so that they were optimized and measured. We help them put in all those quality assurance processes. And once again, we implemented the quality assurance or testing component that validated and verified that those processes were completed, and more importantly, that the system did the activities that it was supposed to do against those requirements. So we made quality assurance changes at the requirements phase, we made quality assurance phase changes at the development practices, and then we did the validation around the testing. And the most important thing is the feedback loop. Because what is quality assurance? It's constant improvement. It's putting a process in place, putting a measure against that process, and making sure that you're measuring why you've done that process. We focus only on that software practice from a quality perspective. Now, all of our work, Dave, just to answer, we didn't cover it in this presentation for Manic. Everything we do is underpinned by ISO and IEEE standards. So all of our quality assurance process, because very importantly, Dave, I can test myself till I'm blue in the face. If the application at a core is rubbish, it's rubbish. It doesn't matter. I can continue to test it and continue to tell you there's a problem. So everything we do is underpinned. We have a very, very robust methodology that we use. It's underpinned by ISO standards, which are quality standards, IEEE, which are engineering standards, and it has its roots in TMMI and CMMI as far as those practices are concerned. And we help the clients adopt those and make general processes. Right now, we're involved in Florida, Dave, on an actual quality assurance process maturity project with the client. They're doing things right.
What does that mean? What is quality assurance?
We're looking at all their practices from soup to nuts within their software, and we're figuring out ways for them to do it better, put a metric against or a measure against everything, and then build plans for improvement. Why are we trying to improve? What do they want to do? They're adding more complexity, and they want to do more in a shorter period of time. So they're doing it the right way. They're not rushing ahead and immediately changing out the methodologies. They're transitioning to an agile practice, and they're putting in all the controls as far as that's concerned.
Got it. So, this is the finalization for what happened with INPERS, right?
So INPERS, with the entire maturity improving, we were able to help them shift more left as far as their quality process. What that means is apply more quality standards and testing techniques much earlier on in the software development lifecycle, which then catches things much earlier. So where they at? They release software defect-free on the defects that they know about. At least they have some measures and changes they need. But that's really what we try to get them to. So they modernized, they operating, and now they are going through a second modernization effort as far as that's concerned.
Love it. So, all right, we're going to open this up for some questions here. If you have any questions, is that showing up? It doesn't look like it's showing up. You can, if you just, yeah, there you go. Wasn't gotta love Zoom. Yeah. So let us know if you have any questions about that. Manic, I think that was great as far as what Good you question, were talking Manic. About. And let me see if I can get Manic. Manic, I gave you a way to be able to unmute. Are you there, Manic? Because I think your question was so great about where QA fits and as opposed to just software testing. If you're there, I don't know that he can unmute. I asked him to unmute. And so what are some of the biggest issues that you see with the finger pointing? When you come in, because you're a third party, you're coming in from the outside looking in, you can identify some of those places and help them with the finger pointing. That was one of the things that popped up earlier about being able to tell. How do you minimize that with your processes?
Yeah, so I think again, in absolute support of what Manic's saying, there are different and disparate maturities that happen or occur across the board when we work within the vendors, within the state agencies. The state agencies have a level of maturity and a way in which they work, and then they engage with multiple vendors that have all different types of maturity. So it's all these disparate maturities. Some of them have got great software quality assurance practices. Some of them have none. They might be very niche focused or have a clear understanding how to solve a problem. They orchestrating the government's orchestrating a significant amount all at the same time. Our value is to come in and help level set from a quality perspective all the different maturities that ultimately this soup of ultimate differences gets pushed through and delivers against what they're looking to do. And yes, there's always that level or element of the testing component that has to occur because we've got to validate it. Okay. But a lot of that work is that feedback to support. What has it changed? Myself and one of the colleagues that are on the call were recently in a meeting with one of the departments, and their department said, we appreciate the feedback that you give for us to give improvements back to one of our vendors so they can do better, and they appreciate it. Now they understand they need to produce these 3 things as opposed to these 2 things in order to better for the state agencies. Remember, we represent the agencies as their partner to make them successful. We have no vested interest in the vendors they've chosen or the vendors they haven't, or whatever it might be, or even the technology they want to adopt. The most important thing is whatever they decide, is it clear? Is it concise? Is it measurable? Is there a process to support it? And then can you validate that entire process?
Love it. Hey, Manik, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
There you go. So who are you with, Manik, first thing?
Yeah, let me say, I will give you a brief update of why I said what I said. Okay, I'm from the National Science Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
We are an executive level agency directly under the White House. We are the prime executive agency to implement complete agile development processes, but we also have implemented software quality assurance in agile. Okay. Now, this is not software testing. Again, I'm saying this is software quality assurance in agile, which is not even in any textbook. So we've been offered, time to even write books on this. Okay. We were on the, when I say, I was on the board of the GAO in writing the agile audit manual. If you want to look at it, you can look at it on the GAO website. They have an audit, they have an agile audit manual now.
And you were involved in that, Manik?
Yes, I was involved in that. Yes.
Fantastic.
So if any agency needs help in implementing agile or in implementing software quality assurance, first thing is you have to implement agile, and then comes the software quality assurance. What happens is when people implement agile, there is no talk of software quality assurance.
Agreed.
Again, I'm saying this is no testing. Okay, I'm not talking
I
about
agree,
testing
man.
at all. Yeah, this is finding problems before they even occur.
Correct.
That's what I'm saying. This is instantaneous audit. Okay, audit at every process of the development cycle. That's what software quality assurance is. So you write user stories. Before they even go into development, how will you audit those? Do you have time for that? So that's the process we have implemented. But our process is completely automated. Okay, we use Atlassian tools. Okay, some things like Jira and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, and most of the stuff is automated. And we write findings, software QA findings, okay, which have to be completed, which have to be addressed before the software goes live in production. And we have software releases every 2 weeks. That's our Scrum. Okay, 2 week Scrum we have. So I think we are much ahead of the game here. I may be speaking, to some, there are no pointing fingers and all those things. I have seen those, but and we have sort of worked through all those anomalies and whatever you call it. I want to call it anomalies, not And most of the stuff is on the federal side, pointing fingers. Okay, I'm not. Contractors are good if you tell them what to do. Okay, so it's the federal side which you have to work with. Okay, to get things the way you need it to be. Agile is not doing faster, cheaper, better. No. That's a NASA buzzword, okay, which led to the Challenger. Which led to the Challenger disorder, the blast and all that stuff. No,
yeah.
Agile is doing things quickly the right way, okay. And it does not mean that you don't have bugs, but you need to have as little bugs as possible because the size of your agile morsel, the small sushi you eat. That's the way it has to be.
So,
Okay.
I'm gonna coin that for you, man. It's agile sushi.
Yes, it's agile is like sushi because it's a Japanese concept. Okay.
And I think to your point, and you actually lead us right to because we're just about to wrap up here. And one of the things that I think is very important is that some agencies have it nailed down. Because you were involved in the whole GAO board, you have a great understanding of this. And it's all, you're actually backing up and looking at it as if you were independent, taking it and saying, all right, we just want to make sure this thing works. Where I think early adoption of the quality assurance reduces the failures and cycles. Would you agree with that, Manik?
Yes, I do. Yes. Quality assurance, you need to have, unfortunately, a lot of federal agencies want to eliminate quality assurance.
Mm-hmm.
They think it's a waste of time to do instantaneous audits, but they have the money to then spend at the end in fixing all the bugs. Isn't that great economics? So
yeah,
Manik, that's the way it is. So, but if you implement SQA, I'm telling you, you will save a bundle.
And Manik, we're in complete agreement. The sad part about people is they adopt agile to avoid quality assurance in many instances, because as you so rightly put it, it's the sushi. So they go, well, it's smaller. I'm in more control of it. So Manik, I think we're saying the same words in a different way, and we have found a friend in an agency that I would love to spend more time with you and learn what you guys have done.
Yeah, sure.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So Manik, I'm afraid Katie will be reaching out to you to get in touch. Manik, I'd love to meet you virtually and hear what you guys are doing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what it's about, because you are already implementing the same things, and we want to encourage agencies to adopt this early.
Absolutely.
And that way the failures, to your point, we see it all the time, that the failures are way more expensive. You said 100 to 1,000 times more expensive, right, Jethro?
Yeah. I mean, you call it an audit, a Manik of a use case. We call it a test of the use case, or a validation of that use case.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we're saying the same thing in different ways, but I think what you're doing is super exciting, and I'd like to expose you to some of the things that we're doing, and maybe we're doing something that's similar, and we can help each other out. I would love to learn from you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Manik, you're awesome. Thank you,
Manik,
for popping in and helping, because I think we're like you say, we're all talking the same way, and love to be able to incorporate what you have. So take us out here, Jethro. Early adoption of quality assurance reduces the failures and cycles. Just prove that with Manik and his crew.
Yeah, and I think, Manik, when we speak about independent, we don't necessarily mean independent like iLab. Of course, we would love it to be iLab, but that independent could also be just in that segregation of duties, which is a quality assurance principle, the segregation of those duties. Reducing the system modernization timelines, provide real-time accountability and visibility where you stand in quality. You talk about it. It's an audit. Right now, I've done something. Is it right? Is it of the right quality? Should I proceed? Okay. And you said it, Manik, the craziness of nobody adopts it, but then wants to fix it at the end. How much does that cost? And why do we automate? Well, faster time with the same level of quality. That's what we're saying. And making sure that you're reducing those assurances or even testing timelines. That's me, Dave.
That's you. Fantastic. Love it. Now, we mentioned earlier that you are not under obligation to purchase from any vendor, including iLab, but if you want to, you can. They are a small business. They have a GSA schedule. You can find them on GSA Advantage, and their SIN is 541-511. They can help with this independent, acting on your behalf before everything goes crazy or before you get a black eye, right? You will get a recap email at the end. By the end of the day today, you'll have a recap email. You also get another one next week. We'll get a secondary one with some very specific information dealing with this conversation as well. You get the presentation, links to the session docs, capabilities, and a link to the video so you can watch it over and over, because Jethro is a fantastic presenter and is not afraid to take things on the fly. How you like that? So we're just really appreciative of you guys joining us today. We know you have a lot of things to do. Hopefully this was helpful. If you'd like to reach out to Jethro, there's his direct information. If you need anything from us at GovBrief, there's our information. You can always reach Katie Tucker at katie.tucker@ilabqa.com. Jethro, excellent. Manik, you are awesome. As I mentioned, very fantastic. And we'll make sure that we get that distributed as part of the follow-up, because I think there's a lot of folks who can learn a lot from each other. And that's what this is for, right, Jethro?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the principle of quality, learning from what you did before.
That's
so
exactly
thank you very much.
All right, folks, we appreciate you. If you need anything else, please let us know. We're going to let you get out of here because we're just a couple minutes behind our 40 minutes, but I think it was beneficial. Thank you so much, Jethro. Awesome.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
See you guys.